my dear students, welcome to Teacher at Home. Today class we are going to learn the 10th chapter, Buildings, Paintings and Books. Marsami and the Iron Pillar. Marsami was so excited. His brother has propelled his wheelchair all along the dusty stony path, past the Qutub Minar and up the metal ramp. It had been tough, but now he was here, in front of the famous Iron Pillar. It was an unforgettable experience. Metallurgy. Ancient Indian metallurgists made major contribution to the metallurgical history of the world. Archaeological excavations have shown that the Harappans were master craftsmen, had knowledge of copper metallurgy. They even manufactured bronze by mixing copper. Bronze by mixing copper and tin. While the Harappans belong to the Bronze Age, the successors belongs to the Iron Age. India produced highly advanced types of iron forged iron, wrought iron and cast iron. Iron pillar. See here, this is the iron pillar. Iron pillar at Mehrali, Delhi is a remarkable example of the skill of Indian craftsmen. മെഹ്റലിലുള്ള ഈ ഒരു എക്യുപ്മെന്റ് എന്ന് പറയുന്നത് ക്രാഫ്റ്റ്മാൻ്റെ പ്രത്യേകമായിട്ടുള്ള ഒരു സ്കില്ലാണ്. It is made up of iron, 7.2 meter high, weigh about 3 tons. It was made about 1500 years ago. We know the date because there is an inscription on the pillar mentioned a ruler called Chandra, probably belonged to the Gupta dynasty. What is amazing is the fact that the pillar has not rusted through the centuries. Buildings in brick and stone. The skills of our craftspersons are also apparent in the buildings that have survived, such as stubas. The word stuba means a mount. While there are several kinds of stubas, round and tall, big and small, these have certain common features. Generally, there is a small box placed at the center of heart of the stuba. This may contain bodily remains, such as teeth, bone or ashes of the Buddha or his followers, or things they used, as well as precious stones and coins. This box, known as the relic casket, was covered with earth. Later, a layer of mud brick or baked brick was added on top, and then the dome-like structure was sometimes covered with carved stone slabs. Often a path, known as the Pradakshina Pada, was laid around the stupa. This was surrounded with railings. Entrance to the path was through gateways. Devotees walked around the stupa in a clockwise direction as a mark of devotion. Both railings and gateways were often decorated with sculpture. Find Amravati on map 7. This was a place where a magnificent stupa once existed. Many of the stone carvings for decorating the stupa were made about 2000 years ago. Other buildings were hollowed out of rock to make artificial caves. Some of these were good elaborately decorated with sculptures and painted walls. Some of the earliest Hindu temples are also built at this time. Deities such as Vishnu, Shiva and Durga were worshipped in these shrines. The great stupa at Sanji, Madhya Pradesh stupas like this one were built over several centuries. While the brick mount probably dates at the time of Ashoka, the railings and gateways were added during the time of later rulers. Sculpture from Amaravati, look at the picture that describes an early temple of Bitargan, Uttar Pradesh. This was built around 1500 years ago and was made of baked brick and stone. To right, it is the monolithic temples that is at Mahabalipuram. Each of these was carved out of a huge single piece of stone. That is why they are known as monoliths. While brick structures are built by adding layers of bricks from the bottom upwards, in this case the stone cutters have to work from top downwards. Problem that stone cutters may have faced. Durga temple at Alhol, built about 1400 years ago. The most important part of the temple was the room known as the Garbhagriha, where the image of the chief deity was placed. It was here the priests performed religious rituals and devotees offered worship to the deity. Often, as at Bitargan, a tower known as the Shikara was built on top of the Garbhagriha to mark this out of a sacred place. Building shikaras required careful planning. Most temples also had a space known as mandapa. It was a hall where people could assemble. Find Mahabalipuram and Aihole on map 7. Some of the finest stone temples were built in these towns. Some of these are shown here. How were stubas and temples built? There were several stages in building a stupa or a temple. Usually, kings or queens decided to build this as it was an expensive affair. First, good quality stone had to be found, quarried, and transported to a place that was often carefully chosen for the new building. Here, these rough blocks of stone have to be shaped and carved into pillars and panels for walls, floors, and ceilings. And then these have to be placed in precisely the right position. Left, Jaina monastery from Orissa. The two-story building was carved out of rock surface. Notice the entrance of the rooms. Jaina monks lived and mediated in the rooms. What basic cave shown here different from the illustration? A sculpture from the National Museum, New Delhi. Kings and queens probably spent money from their treasury to pay the craftsmen who worked to build these splendid structures. Besides, when devotees came to visit the temple or the stupa, they often bought gifts which were used to decorate the buildings. For example, an association of ivory workers paid for one of the beautiful gateway at Sanji. Among the others who paid for decorations were merchants, farmers, garland makers, perfumers, smiths, and hundreds of men and women who are known by their names were inscribed on pillars, railings, and walls. So, when you get a chance to visit any of these buildings, remember how several hundreds of people probably worked to construct and decorate them. Make a diagram like the one in page to show the stages in the building of a temple and stupa. Paintings from Ajanta. Describe that what you see in each of these paintings. From Ajanta on map 7, this is a place where several caves were hollowed out of the hills over centuries. Most of these were monasteries for Buddhist monks and some of them were decorated with paintings. Here are some examples. As the caves are dark inside, most of the paintings were done in the light of torches. The colors, which are vivid even after 1500 years, were made of plants and animals, plants and minerals. The artists who created these splendid works of art remain unknown. See here, the art is very amazing to see. The world of books. Some of the best known epics were written during this period. Epics are grand long compositions about heroic men and women and include stories about gods. A famous Tamil epic, Shilapatikaram, was composed by a poet named Ilango around 1800 years ago. It is the story of a merchant named Kovalan who lived in Puhar and fell in love with a courtesan named Madhavi, neglecting his wife Kannagi. Later, he and Kannagi left Puhar and went to Madurai, where he was wrongly accused of theft by the court jeweler of the Pandya king. The king sentenced Kovalan to death. Kannagi, who still loved him, was full of grief and anger at his injustice and destroyed the entire city of Madurai. A description from the Shilapatikaram. Here is how the poet describes Kannagi's grief. O witness of my grief, you cannot console me. Is it right that your body, fairer than pure gold, lies unwashed here in the dust? Is it just that in the red glow of the twilight, your handsome chest, framed with a flower breath, lies thrown down to the bare earth while I remain alone, helpless and abandoned to despair? Is there no God? Is there no God in this country? Can there be a God in a land where the sword of the king is used to a murder of the innocent strangers? Is there no God? No God. And the Tamil epic Manimekalai was composed by Satanar around 1400 years ago. This describes the story of the daughter of Kovalan and Madhavi. His beautiful compositions were lost to scholars for many centuries, till their manuscripts were rediscovered about 100 years ago. Other writers such as Kalidasa, about whom you read in chapter 9, wrote in Sanskrit. A verse from the Meghaduta. Here is a verse from Kalidas' best known poem, the Meghaduta, in which a monsoon cloud is imagined to be a messenger between lovers who are separated from one another. See how the poet describes the breeze that will carry the cloud northwards. A cool breeze, delightful as it is touched, with the fragrance of the earth swollen by your showers, inhaled deeply by elephants and causing the wind figs to ripen, will blow gently as you go. Can be described as a lover of nature, recording and preserving old stories. A number of Hindu religious stories that were in circulation earlier were written down around the same time. These include the Puranas. Purana literally means old. Puranas contains stories about gods and goddesses such as Vishnu, Shiva, Durga, and Parvati. They also contain details on how they were to be worshipped. Besides, there is an account about the creation of the world and about kings. Puranas were written in simple Sanskrit verse and were meant to be heard by everybody. They are probably recited in temples by priests, and people came to listen to them. Two Sanskrit epics, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, had been popular for a long time. Some of you may be familiar with these stories. Mahabharata is about a war between two Kauravas and Pandavas who were cousins. This was a war to gain control of the throne of the Kurus and the capital, Hastinapura. The story itself was an old one, but it was written down in the form in which we now know it today, about 1500 years ago. Both the Puranas and Mahabharata were supposed to have been compiled by Vyasa. The Bhagavad Gita, about which you have learned in chapter 8, was also included in the Mahabharata. Ramayana is about Rama, a prince of Koshala, who was sent into the exile. His wife Sita was abducted by the king Lanka named Ravana, and Rama had to fight a battle to get her back. He won and returned to Ayodhya, capital of Kosala, after his victory. Like the Mahabharata, this was an old story that was now written down. Valmiki is recognized as the author of Sanskrit Ramayana. There are several versions, the Mahabharata and Ramayana, popular amongst people in different parts of the subcontinent. Find out about a version in your state. Stories that is told by old people, ordinary people. Ordinary people also told stories, composed poems and songs, sang, danced, performed plays. Some of these are preserved in collections of stories such as Jatakas and Panchatantra, which were written down around this time. Stories from the Jatakas were often shown on the railings and subas and paintings in places such as Ajanta. Here is one such a story, the story of the Mangiki. Once upon a time there was a great Mangiki who lived on the banks of the Ganga in the Himalayas with 80,000 followers. They fed on the fruit of a special mango tree, which were very sweet. Such exquisite mangoes did not grow on the plains. One day, a ripe mango fell on the river, floated all the way to Varanasi. There, the king of the city who was bathing in the river found it and was amazed when he tasted it. He asked the foresters of his kingdom whether they could find the tree of them and led him all the way to Himalayas. There, the king and the courtiers had their fill of mangoes. At night, the king discovered that the monkeys were also feasting on the fruit and decided to kill them. However, the king of the monkeys worked out of a plan to save his followers. He broke off the branches of the mango tree and tied them to form a bridge across the river, held one to one till all the followers crossed over. Exhausted with effort, he fell down and lay dying. Human king saw what had happened and tried unsuccessfully to revive the monkey. When he died, the monkey mourned his death and paid him full respect. The story is shown on the piece of sculpture found at Suba at Bahabur in central India. Parts of the story are shown in the sculpture. Writing books on science. This was also the time when Aryabhatta, a mathematician and astronomer, wrote a book in Sanskrit known as the Aryabhattiyam. He stated that day and night were caused by the rotation of the earth on the axis, even though it seems as the sun is rising and setting every day. He developed a scientific explanation for eclipses as well. He also found a way of calculating the circumferences of a circle which is nearly as accurate as the formula we use today. Varaha Mihira, Brahmagupta, and Bhaskaracharya were some of the other mathematicians and astronomers who made several discoveries. Try and find out more about them. 0. While numerals had been used earlier, mathematicians in India now invented a special symbol for 0. The system for counting was adapted by the Arabs, spread to Europe, continues to be used throughout the world. Romans use a system of counting without using 0. Try and find more about them. Ayurveda is a well-known system of health science that was developed in ancient India. Two famous practitioners of Ayurveda in ancient India are Charaka and Shasruda. Charaka Samhita, written by Charaka, is a remarkable book of medicine. In this treatise, Sasruda Samhita, Sasruda speaks about elaborate surgical procedures. So that's all about this chapter. If you are interested, please do like, share and subscribe my channel. Okay, thank you.